Today, I'm going to be talking about a very basic subject, normal Judaism. By normal, I'm talking about sort of basic Judaism, the calendar, the holidays, the Sabbath. And then I'm going to be talking about one aspect of medieval Judaism, which is medieval Jewish philosophy. But first, let's do the easy part. This is part of two lectures on medieval Judaism, that is the Middle Ages. And what I'm talking about are altogether three different aspects of this this time period. And one is, I'm trying to get the glare out of there. One is radical mysticism, and we did a whole different lecture on that one. And now we're talking about what I call normal mysticism, which simply means that Judaism, as most people practice it. What this means is that you live a Jewish life. Judaism is a way of life. By way of life, we mean it affects every day. It doesn't just affect your morality. It doesn't just affect, what you think about things, what you believe. It really affects your life. And the idea of all the rituals of Judaism is that they point you in a certain direction. The word Torah means to point you towards doing good. It's a very realistic view of human beings. The human beings are basically self-centered and selfish, and we do what we sort of need to do to survive. And normally we don't really care about others, at least not very much. We don't go out of our way. And Judaism is always pushing us to care about the poor, to care about the poor, to care about the oppressed, to care about the downtrodden, to care about the have-nots. But we need for that to be reinforced. We need to think all the time about us. And are we living the best lives we can? Are we the best versions of ourselves? What can we do better? So think about it this way. Here are the three most important holiest day holidays of the Jewish year. Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur means the Day of Atonement. On Yom Kippur, you fast for 25 hours. The idea is that we're partly angels, partly souls, and partly animals, partly bodies, physical selves. And for 25 hours, we can push down that physical self and just care about our spiritual selves. And by the way, it's hard. It's hard to fast for 25 hours, but modern medicine has also shown that fasting can be really good for you. So there's no harm done, and it makes you appreciate things. And one of the ideas is that we do not live by bread alone. We do not have to care only about our physical needs. And so on Yom Kippur, on the Day of Atonement, and think about the word atonement, break that up, and it's at 1 minute. You become at one with yourself. You think about your life. You think about how you're living your life and how you can be better. The second most important holiday, and this is always surprising to people, is the Sabbath. It's surprising because it doesn't seem like a holiday. It comes every week. But starting on Friday night, going till Saturday night at sundown, from sundown to sunset, from sunset to sunset. Again, it's a 25 hours. And we, a traditional Jewish person, such as myself, does not use money. Think about all the things that are affected by using money. We do not write, we do not travel, and we'll talk about this when we get to modern Judaism, but for somebody like me, I don't travel, except for if I had to for an emergency like visiting the hospital, something medical, or to go to the synagogue. Think about all the things that are cut out if you can't travel. And it's a day of reflection. It's a day of how can I do better? What did I do in the last week? How can I do better in the next week? And the third holiday, Rosh Hashanah, is the new year. And again, what did I do in the last year? How can I do better in the next year? So the three main holidays are really about self-reflection. They're about me. How can I be better? Now, I don't mean this with any disrespect, but if you think about the holidays of Christianity, both Christmas and Easter and Christmas, the two most important Christian holidays, are about the life of Jesus. Again, I mean, no disrespect, but it's very different. The three main holidays of Judaism are not about anything else, not even really necessarily about God. They're about us and our relationship to God and our relationship to other people. So that's a little bit about a normal life. But let me go on. Um, if you stop for that 24 hours every week, that affects the rest of the week. It affects not only how you act, but you're gearing up for that. So that becomes the center of the week. On the different holidays, we stop, we are refreshed, we have to rest. The three next most important holidays are Passover and Shavuot, Shavuot, and Sukkot, Sukkot. And they were pilgrimage festivals in the ancient times when the Israelites would go down to Jerusalem, to the temple in Jerusalem. And today they're festivals. And Passover, in very short, is what we've talked about many times about caring about the poor. You were once strangers in the land of Egypt. You were once slaves in the land of Egypt. Now, always remember those people who are bad off now. Sukkot is Thanksgiving. As a matter of fact, the Thanksgiving holiday of the pilgrims was patterned on Sukkot. And the third holiday is Shavuot, which is about the giving of the Ten Commandments on Mount Sinai, something that we've certainly talked about. So those are the next three holidays going down in order in the calendar. And there are other minor holidays. You've all heard of Hanukkah, and it seems like a major holiday. It isn't. A major holiday is something that was ordained in the Torah. Hanukkah came much later. On Hanukkah, you can work. So people think it's much more important because it comes around the time of Christmas, and so people equate it. But it's actually a minor holiday for Jewish people. And another holiday is Purim. We talked about the book of Esther. And about how do you live in a Jewish life when you're not in your own country. There are other minor holidays. One of them is Tu B'Shvat, which is like Arbor Day. It sounds funny, but it's a new year for trees. The idea is we care about nature. So a long time before there were people who cared about ecology and things like that, Jewish people have always cared about the environment and have always tried to protect the environment. Symbolized by trees and planting trees and taking care of trees. It really means taking care of God's earth. So those are some of the holidays. Observing those holidays, observing the Sabbath are important components of a normal Jewish life as it was practiced in the Middle Ages and as it's practiced today. Another part is the idea of keeping kosher. We've talked about this a little bit, but to go over a couple of the main things. You do not eat meat that has not been killed in a way that is humane to the animal. That is, the animal doesn't feel any pain when it's being killed. Another thing is we don't mix milk and meat. Milk is life. Meat is literally a dead animal. Milk is what gives life to a baby animal. We consider combining those things obscene and barbaric, and we don't combine life and death in the same meal. So again, that affects everything. And so think about me going to a restaurant. There are very few things that I can eat. That is, I can't eat any of the meat there. I can't eat any of the chicken there. We do not eat any pork or any pork products. So again, this is affecting everything. So every time I eat, I'm thinking about my Jewishness. So all these things put together, obviously there are many others, but these are important components, make up for what we'll call a normal Jewish life, and for a normal Jewish life in the Middle Ages, which is our subject right now. So now I turn to the other part of this, which is about philosophy. So in what I have here on these sheets and what you'll have downloaded to you on an email are how medieval Jewish philosophy compares to earlier stages of Judaism. Let me try it this way. What's philosophy? You know, philosophy is really logic. 1, 2, 3, 4. Prove a proposition. If you ever took geometry, and just about everybody did, how can we how can we prove something? How can I prove that I exist? How can I prove that God exists? And it's all very logical. So now take philosophy and bring it and combine it with Judaism. Well, there's a lot in Judaism, which is commandments, and there aren't necessarily reasons for those commandments. But philosophy says, yes, we're going to harmonize everything we know about science, everything that we that's logical, with the Bible? Well, there are certain things that came into conflict. A key example, and I have it on these sheets, is a miracle. A miracle is by definition a supernatural event. Now think about that word supernatural. There's nature. Science studies nature, the natural ways of things. A supernatural event means that God has intervened in nature or intervened in history, and he has disrupted everything. Well, science, by definition, uh, precludes the idea of anything supernatural. Science doesn't believe in that. So if you're a medieval Jewish philosopher, how do you reconcile these things? Well, some of them are, at least to somebody like me, a little bit fanciful. They couldn't take the idea of, say, the sea parting, the greatest miracle in the history of the Jewish people. And so they said, well, that was really created before the natural laws were created. If there is a snake in the Garden of Eden, you'll remember the Garden of Eden story. Well, that snake was created before nature. So, that's a little hard to take. But what you can see in there, how hard they were trying to reconcile science and religion. And so on these sheets, if I can still find them, you'll have all the different things. So if in the Bible there's anthropomorphism, which means God can take human shape, the medieval philosophers said, no, you shouldn't take that literally. If there are Bible stories that describe God with human traits in the Bible, the medieval philosopher says, no, take them metaphorically. And we talked about miracles. Now we'll talk about laws, that every law must have a reason. That is, it's not just that God commanded it. We have to find through our human reason, why logically this law makes sense. It's almost like not taking God at his word. We have to come up with our own reasons. And that's a very modern approach. If I say to somebody, I don't want you to have a cheeseburger, you're going to need to say, well, you're going to want to say, well, give me the reasons. Well, a minute ago, I gave our reasons. You don't have to accept those, but at least that's something that it can at least makes it at least a logical proposition. So as opposed to God saying, don't have milk and meat and not explaining why, medieval philosophy will find a reason for every single commandment. That's very logical, but it's also in a certain way very human-based, not just God-based, that we human beings can find out what God wants from us, through our own reason. So those are some of the examples that you'll have on these sheets. Let me see if I can find another one that would help with this. Here, when we talk about the afterlife in the Bible, there's something called the underworld or Sheol. In Rabbinic Judaism, there's heaven and resurrection. But in medieval times, they say, well, the soul may get a new body, but it's not necessarily the same one. So the idea of resurrection changes. So on your sheets, you'll see in the philosophy these different aspects of it. But the basic thing you need to know about medieval Judaism is that there are three parts. There's mysticism, which I talked about in the other lecture, this radical way of rethinking about God and why things happen and our place in it. And one of the key things is what you can do, that you in the mystical world can affect God. You can help to harmonize God. God has these different parts that need to be harmonized. What you do, whether you're good or bad, not only affects you and your future, but it affects God himself. Normal mysticism or normal Judaism talks about just living a good life and caring for others. And medieval philosophy talks about, in a very logical way, how can we harmonize science and religion, and how can we think for ourselves to find the best way we can to live our lives. So those are a couple of the elements. Those are three of the elements in medieval Judaism, and putting them together, we have a picture of medieval Jewish life.